Hello, everyone. How are you? As it was announced, today we will start the day with a small discussion about the Panama Papers. You all know, of course, the Panama Papers won the Pulitzer Prize. You all know from what I see in the crowd, you probably read a lot about it. It was a series of investigative stories that was made in collaboration with over 300 journalists from around the world on 6 continents and exposed offshore leaks of many rich and powerful people who had hidden some of their companies in offshore places like Panama. And today we will talk about the investigation for the Panama Papers with 2 journalists that were a part of this investigation, Benoit Bringer from France and Alessia Cerantola from Italy. First of all, I would like to just say a couple of words about the journalist. Alessia Cerantola is a freelance investigative journalist. She's the co-founder of the Investigative Reporting Project Italy. And she's also a radio reporter and a producer with the BBC World Service. She has reported from Japan since 2007. Now she's in Italy based, but she goes to Japan and works from time to time from there. She covers stories from environmental issues, sex crimes, corruption, and cyber crimes for cross-sectional media such as The Guardian, the Japan Times, and Al Jazeera. Also, we have Benoit Bringer. We saw, am I pronouncing that right or not really?
French accent, it's Bringer.
Oh, well, that's really... Okay, Benoit Bringer. Okay, sorry. Yes, we had the honor of seeing his movie yesterday about the whistleblower from yeah, I can't pronounce that either. Yes, and the movie was wonderful. We got great criticism afterwards. So we would discuss a little more now about the Panama Papers today. Can you please start with describing your involvement in the Panama Papers, in the story? How did that start? How did you become to actually be involved and start the story?
Should I start?
Well, okay.
Okay, so as in my case, I became involved in the Panama Papers investigation in 2015. Started this collaboration with a bunch of colleagues. At the beginning, we were some dozens, then we became hundreds, up to 376 journalists. At that time, I was called by the ICIJ and to work together with a colleague, a friend of mine, who, as in my case, is focused and specialized on Japanese issues. So, despite the fact that we are both Italian, so both me and my colleague, we were asked to investigate and to analyze the data regarding Japanese people involved in the Panama Papers. So it was quite a kind of unique situation inside this team of journalists who worked to this data. So I was in charge of the Japanese team, together with my friend and other 2 colleagues. We were responsible for the Japanese stories inside this leak, taken from this leak. And I also slightly took part to the Italian part of the investigation in the end of the just before the publication. So we realized we published a series of stories for the Japan Times and the Diplomat, and in Italy for the magazine L'Espresso and Il Fatto Quotidiano, which is another daily newspaper. And so that was my involvement since 2015. We published the stories, we started publishing the stories related to the Panama Papers investigation in April 2016. And well, but it was only the beginning. What I want to underline is that the Panama Papers has been seen like, is considered like a sort of a change in the way journalists do their job, because it was an experiment, but it was not the first, because ICIJ has been doing this kind of collaboration since years, since at least 20 years. So there was LuxLeaks, China Leaks, Offshore Leaks, and many other investigations not involving, not related to tax havens issues. So I think that the huge impact that the Panama Papers had was related to the fact that, especially to the numbers, and of course to the fact that this collaboration was quite unique. But it was kind of the end of a very long process of involving, of doing this kind of journalism, involving more reporters from around the world collaborating on the same document. So it was not the beginning of something, but the kind of the outcome of years of improving the strategies and the new ways of doing investigative journalism by collaborating with colleagues from around the world. That was my point.
So I work for a small company, 40 person approximately, and we're producing an investigative show for French public TV. The name is Cache Investigation. It's a 2-hour investigative program in prime time, and it's quite famous in France. And as we saw yesterday with the LuxLeaks, Edouard Perrin, which is my colleague, was the first to work on the first to receive the documents from the LuxLeaks, and then he worked with the ICIJ because there were so much documents and it involved so much countries that he felt that he had to share the documents. So that's when we started to work with ICIJ. So then the collaboration started, and we continue after that. And yes, they called Edouard Perrin when they received the Panama paper leaks. But it wasn't available. So as I was his colleague, I was involved in that way in this program. So for me it was totally new, the collaboration, because I just would like to underline that usually, and especially in the investigative field in journalism, the tradition is more the tradition of the lonely wolf, the guy with chasing the scoop alone and protecting his scoop, and so and people have a lot of ego, they are very proud of what they do, so they want to be in front of the light, etc. And it's totally different with the ICIJ. The approach is the opposite of that. ICIJ is only an organization to help investigative journalists to work together. They publish some story, but mainly their job is to help us to work together and to have an impact at the end.
That was my next question. If you could describe, both of you, how did the process go with the International Consortium of Journalists? How did they organize? How did they give you the documents? I mean, how did they choose the journalist? And then how did that process of giving you, leaking you the documents went? Like, did you get only part of the documents? Did you get part, like, to see the whole data? Could you both describe that process a little?
There is no, you don't apply to go to ICIJ. Either you have been in contact with them in previous investigation, either you go to see them because you have a lot of data and you cannot do it something by yourself, or they called you because they have documents about maybe, I don't know, Tunisia, for example. It was the case in the Panama Papers, and they said, wow, there's a lot of stuff about Tunisia, but we don't know this place and we cannot do anything. So they called some people, they choose the best person, maybe it was your case, to deal with this data. About how do we work for the Panama Papers? Bastian Obermeier, the journalist from the Süddeutsche Zeitung in Germany, received, he was the guy in contact with John Doe, and he received the documents. So he's the one who collected the data at the beginning, and it was so huge that he said, I cannot do it by myself, and asked ICIJ to be involved in the project. And then at the point, ICIJ is providing the tools, the digital tools to treat, to stock, to, I don't know, it is stock in English, to have store the data, to protect the data, and to make we're able to access the data with the digital tools. But maybe you can have a word about that.
Yeah, so you don't ask, as Benoit just said, you don't ask to be part of the ICIJ. Usually they look at, they read and they see what kind of job you're doing. They meet you during an international conference and they see what your job is. Of course, there are many great investigative journalism from around the world, but there are some criteria for collaborating with ICIJ, which is, first of all, speaking English, which is not taken for granted in many cases, especially in Italy. I mean, we have excellent journalists, but we are not able to express, to speak, or, well, to work in English, which is sometimes can be a barrier for this kind of collaborations, because of course if you want and if you have to work with colleagues from around the world, you need at least to have a common language. We can pick up another language, Chinese, I don't know, but still we need one. So in this case it's mostly English, even if with the Panama Papers half of the documents were in Spanish. So another thing to consider was having in the newsrooms people being able to read at least, or to have some knowledge of Spanish. Of course, there were some colleagues who helped us translating part of them, but it was very useful having also a person inside our team being able to speak Spanish. In our case, it was not me, but my colleague. Since I don't speak, I mean, I can barely understand Spanish, I can read it, but it's not a language that I know. So that was one aspect. Then when ICIJ put together all this team, they had to build a very secure environment for us. And so they gave us some tools, online database with different levels of access with authenticators and other security steps to take to log in. This was to protect first, of course, the documents, but also to protect ourselves in case we have been, I mean, the risk of being hacked or the risk of being asked information by the police of each government is very high, is very risky, and so and it happened to some of us. So what ICIJ did was a huge work of building this structured database with all the data. So all of us journalists had access to the entire data. structured and unstructured data. So what we could do, what they decided to do was dividing us for countries. So of course, I could investigate also the Macedonian side if I would, but it wouldn't have any sense because we had Macedonian colleagues doing, I guess, yes. I don't remember very well, but of course we had French colleagues investigating the French part, and so Japanese doing the Japanese side. Of course, you share all the information you find inside the data. You put them in a sort of, let's call it a sort of Facebook, a private Facebook for us, with all the divided in different sections, groups, files, update, forum. So every day we put all our findings online, we share them with all our colleagues. So in case I found, for example, an interesting case in Italy related to a mafia case, but a colleague from Croatia, for example, said, oh, this man has done this business in Croatia as well. Why don't we work together and join our efforts in investigating that story together? And that's how many of the investigation came up. So thanks to these connections and then cross-boarding collaboration. So in this case and this way, this database worked fantastically because we've seen how many stories wouldn't be possible without such a huge stage where all of us journalists could share and could improve the level of our investigation. Also, another aspect was that in many teams there were not lawyers or data journalists. So we can also rely on the data journalists from other teams or from the ICIJ. With their help, we could have a visual graphics, visual stories, and other material that otherwise we wouldn't be able to make ourselves. So there was a kind of really journalism with no borders in this case, we can say that.
I just want to add that the database is very, very simple to use. What is inside is complicated, but the way we use it, it's like Google, really. So it's just, you just tape the name of people, for example, the Macedonian Prime Minister, and then you just see if he's in the database or not, and all the documents who are related to his name. So it's really easy to use, but to access it, it was really secure, so you need a password, and you also, on our mobile phone, maybe I think you have the same, we have a special app, and just by clicking on it, I'll have here a password, not password, but it's figures, code, a passcode, and it's changing every 30 seconds.
15 seconds.
Yeah, 15 seconds. So now I can access my database right now with this, but it's red, and it will change. Yeah, so now I need this new, and this allows us to access, but it's not enough to have this. They need to have also my personal password, and I think it's all.
Tor, the use of Tor.
And the use of Tor, but not for Panama Papers. Panama Papers doesn't involve Tor. And that's...
sorry. It goes, the password, as you said, it goes via mobile phone, so how secure is that? It still goes, I mean...
It's not a password, it's a code. So you need that authenticator to add to the password you already add to the login. So you have different steps.
Yeah. 3 steps, the login, the password, and the code. So how the secure thing, because the security is the first priority, actually, and the fact that there are so much journalists involved that the question, Bastien Obermeyer at the beginning, he said it will be impossible to keep the secret during 1 year because it's involved so much people. So the security, the secret, because if you blow the secrets, the investigation is just finished. The whole process is finished. So you have really to keep secret till almost the end, till the moment you will start to confront the people who are in the document. So yes, that was the first priority, and which is amazing is that it worked. So with all these people involved in the project, all the countries and everything, it worked, and till the end, nobody knew that it was coming, and so they asked us to be very, very careful about that and to not speak about that around us. So when we were working at my office about the Panama paper, you choose a special room where we went without the mobile phone to discuss the topic, just in case, because we investigate a lot of case, and other stuff. So we just put our mobile away, and just maybe 4 or 5 people were aware of the story of this investigation, and that was the same with my private circle. That of course, my wife was aware. My mother knew that I was working about tax haven, but tax haven is complicated and we don't really know what it means. She knew that I went to Panama, but so she don't really knew. She didn't really knew, and so yeah, we had to keep it really secret, and that's the paradox. So many journalists working together, this new generation, this new way of doing investigation, and at the same time, we have to keep it really secret.
You mentioned yesterday that you never found out the source of the leak. I wanted to ask, as a journalist, how do you develop trust in the material, in the documents, if you don't know the source? How is that? I mean, do you get into thinking about that dilemma, or?
Yeah, of course it was of course, because you have to work on the credible material. But it was really easy because you just have to check what is inside the data, and it's really simple to check. And there was so much information. You cannot fake 11 millions of documents. It's not possible. So. And as you said yesterday...
No, because there was some, afterwards, there were some, Alicia can also, of course, include, there was some speculation that maybe some people are targeted by the leak, that maybe the leak, of course, because we had, in a way, it's a similar thing with the bombs, with the illegal bombs that we had here. Afterwards, of course, at the first moment it was shocking, and but afterwards there was speculation, especially by the targeted side, by the side that was blamed in the documents, that it's the leak is again controlled by another center, which could have targeted particular people. So how do you,
Yeah, it's always the same story. When there is a message coming from a messenger, you attack the messenger. You try to discredit the messenger. So you say, yeah, John Doe is working for the left wing of CIA, etc. CIA, or the thing is, the leak is only the beginning of the investigation. What you said yesterday is just the beginning for us. It's of course an important beginning, but then we start to work with these documents to investigate, to confront people, to look at legal documents, specialists, to meet people, and to look at public records. So then we do our job. We choose our story in the database. Nobody say you will attack Putin. Nobody say, we choose our own story. We do our own investigation. John Doe just deliver the materials. And the thing is, so there is no way to be manipulated because we check the data. So as soon as the data are true, it's okay. And I don't know what was the interest of John Doe in this story. I don't know if, I think it's for the public interest that he did that. Personally, I think that, but I have no proof. But it doesn't matter for me. As soon as the information I get with this material is in the interest of the public, and that we have to make it public because it can change things.
Yeah, we receive a lot of discredit, especially from journalists as well. So not taking part in the investigation maybe. So we were kind of surprised by that, but we learned how to cope with this as well. And we said, as Benoit just said, it's important for us not the reason why John Doe decided to share this and to give to the Süddeutsche Zeitung these documents, but what he found out of these documents. And he wouldn't know what will come out from this investigation, because each of the teams of the involved in the Panama Papers conducted the investigation in different ways. So, and with no editorial control from ICIJ or from John Doe, of course. The results were completely unknown to the journalists as well, journalists themselves. So let's figure out to ICIJ or to the person who leaked, to the whistleblower. So it was completely something out of the control of the person who decided to leak. And also there was another aspect. Another thing that another complaint critic was about the fact that there were not many Americans, not many U.S. citizens inside. Yeah, it was one of the first. But it was just a leak from a law firm, which is Mossack Fonseca, based in Panama. The only thing we could infer, we could understand, was that not many American citizens are using Mossack Fonseca. Maybe they are using other offshore providers. So who knows, in the future, maybe other results can come out. Who knows?
Yeah, there was a misunderstanding here as well, because with Sashka Cvetkovska and Maya Jovanovska, we also wrote a couple of stories from the Macedonia papers, but they were not that much, and only a couple of businessmen. Well, one of the businessmen is very well known and close to the previous government, but there was misunderstanding in the public that if it's only those businessmen that we discovered, that only those businessmen have offshore companies in Panama, which is, of course, they might be using other companies, they might not be found in the leaked documents, maybe there's other documents, so yeah.
And just to add that even if just imagine that John Doe is working for the competitor of Mossack Fonseca. I just imagine it. Another big lawyer firm in Panama who provide offshore companies, and you say, okay, I have the way to destroy Mossack Fonseca, and then I will be the most powerful. Okay, I don't really care. Maybe next time another lawyer will leak document from this other firm, and I don't really care. The fact is, at the end, the story is important. So, yeah, it's not. We just have to check that we are not manipulated, and that the facts are true, and that they are in the interest of the public. Yes, and with the Panama Papers, we discover the tip of the iceberg of the offshore, or also with the offshore leaks, of course, LuxLeaks, and also, but especially with the Panama Papers, we see the tip of the iceberg. But we need to see the larger part of it. So we need more whistleblowers to leak to us, and so the more we have, the better. So. What John Doe did was just showing us one part of this, giving us a chance to see one part of this hidden world, of this hidden economy, parallel, what we call the parallel world, that is important that people know, especially common people, had to know that every day what they do, the main takeaway from the Panama Papers was that we've seen, and we tried to show people that despite the fact that they live every day as going to buy something, their milk or their bread, paying their VAT tax, there's a parallel world in which people can bring their money and or
or for example, use tax havens to buy, so I don't know, private jets or huge goods without paying VAT. So there are two words. One of the common people who live their daily life paying their taxes, VAT and whatever, and there's a parallel world in which super rich don't pay taxes or very minimum taxes for increasing and having still more money. So that was the main takeaway.
Can you tell us also a few words about how the story went in Japan? How about the process there, and what was the outreach there?
Yeah, so we made three main stories out of the Japanese data from the Panama Papers. One concerning the main security firm, SECOM in Japanese. The other one about the relationship between Iran and Japan during the US embargo. And another story was about the binary options. So we had three main stories. We decided to pick up only these three stories instead of listing names of Japanese inside the Panama Papers. And for example, with the binary options, we've seen that these platforms used for online gambling are registered in Malta and other tax havens, bringing their revenues and opening these websites that are illegal, for example, in Japan, but also in Italy or in other countries, as we could see. So, for example, if you are a Japanese citizen, you can access to this online gambling website and use this, what is called binary options. Binary options is a sort of online gambling in which you decide if a stock option in the next seconds or minutes will go up or down. You just have to see up or down, so binary, and in this way you can win or lose your money. So if you're a Japanese citizen and you can have access to this website that are forbidden in Japan, but they are not registered in Japan, they are registered elsewhere. And so, it's a way in which you go over the rules of your country, just being online and registering this website abroad, and also the revenues goes on the tax havens. So we discovered this system, and we discovered that the Japanese authorities didn't manage to follow and to check all these companies, the new openings, and to stop them from frauding also Japanese citizens. We did, by the way, after these stories of the binary options in Japan, we noticed that the same structure is used, for example, also in Italy. That's why we decided to investigate the Italian side of the binary options, and then we published a story in Italian as well. And I think that the same scheme is very common in many other countries. We just focus on the ones we know more. And that's one story. But the main the main success of the Japanese, the main impact of the result of the Japanese investigations was that it somehow changed the way of doing investigative journalism in Japan. After that, the first center for investigative journalism opened in Japan. It was last year. It was launched this year, so it's the first center for independent. So it's something quite new in Japan, where we don't have this long history about investigative journalism. And also for the first time there was a bigger impact compared to LuxLeaks or China Leaks, Offshore Leaks, because we have more media partners inside the Panama Papers. We have both a new news agency, a newspaper, but also a TV. The national TV, NHK. So the impact was broader. And still now in Japan they are speaking and writing about, they wrote at least 10 books about Panama Papers, as far as I've seen. I wrote 2 chapters of 2 of these. So telling about my experience as an Italian inside the Japanese team of the Panama Papers to the Japanese. So it was a kind of a funny situation. But anyway, so more than the impact as well, because there are no lawsuits ongoing in Japan after the Panama Papers, but there are discussions. And for example, the finance police in Japan calculated the entire amount of evaded taxes of Japanese inside the Panama Papers, it was a move quite unexpected, new for the Japanese. So, and we've seen that there are many Japanese who are supposed to be less corrupted than other countries or than other people, entrepreneurs moving their money in tax havens to evade or elude taxes. And we had the Japanese authorities collaborating in this way, trying to put together the numbers of this evasion or illusion, depending on the situation.
As you mentioned, the Panama Papers showed a parallel world where the rich and famous can manage to just take their money and don't obey the laws that the common people, of course, have to obey to. So my question afterwards, after the revelations, except of course the shock and the pressure of these particular people, what did it change? Like, what did it change in those societies where the people were put, I mean, where the pressure on these individuals was discovered?
That's a difficult question. I did a second documentary, a second movie. I did first, the day of the revelation, a first 2-hour documentary, the first Panama paper, I call it the hold-up of the century, and then 1 year after, 3 months ago, I did a second one, The Last Secrets of the Panama Papers, to work on the consequences and to understand the consequences. It's hard to say because a lot of people say, okay, it was a big boom and after everything is as before, and that's not totally true. First, for example, the Pakistan Prime Minister he has been forced to resign 1 year after the revelation, after a lot of investigation in his countries regarding an offshore company owned by his own family. The Prime Minister of Iceland has to resign just 2 days after. Okay, he has been replaced by another guy who also had an offshore company, but still. And in France, we are maybe the tax authorities are investigating 500 people. So I don't know how much money it represents for France, but they will earn a lot of money for the public, for the public expense. And the justice is investigate maybe 10 cases in France. Some of them are very, very big bank, major bank. The Société Générale, for example. I did a part of my investigation about Société Générale, who used to open offshore a company for its own clients, and it was quite a big scandal in France, and it shows that they don't do that anymore because of the Panama Papers, because of a lot of pressure coming from this kind of leaks, offshore leaks, China leaks, and not China leaks, but Swiss leaks. And so step by step it's changing. It's all in the same time. So we will need more leaks, and it will, as maybe you saw in the press, more leaks will come soon. So it's a kind of process will take a lot of time, but it's changing the way we see the offshore world, because it's very difficult to understand this parallel world. But now people start to understand, and politics knows that it's very sensible question. So that in Europe, there is a special commission to try to understand how we can improve the laws to avoid this kind of techniques, to avoid the use of offshore world. So there was a lot of resistance because a lot of powerful people use it, a lot of big companies use it. Apple, USA, one of the first tax havens is
Delaware.
Delaware. That's why the US were not so much in the Panama Papers, even if they are, some of them are, but because they have their own tax haven in their own countries. So yeah, it's changed. It takes a lot of time, but it changed.
Systematically, do you think systematically did something change, except the resignation? Of course.
I think the use of offshore company is almost finished now. I mean, in Panama or this kind of tax haven, there is new way of avoiding tax, to pay tax. There is new way of fraud. I mean, it's like a snake, you find something, but the rich people, the powerful people will find another way. So it's like this fight it's for an eternity. Of course, it will continue for a long time. But I think the offshore use of offshore society, of shell companies, in this kind of countries like Bermuda, Seychelles, or of Panama, or now maybe it's easier to open a shell company in London than in this kind of country. So it's changing, but there's a new way of avoiding tax, a new way of hiding his own money. For example, in Switzerland, you can go in Switzerland. Before it was very, very common. A French politician or French people went to Switzerland, opened a Swiss account and an offshore company in Panama, for example, and they hide money like this. But you don't do that. It's too obvious now. So you go to Switzerland with another guy, and he will hold the money for you. Un prête-nom, how do you say that in English? Trustee is a legal guy. You just choose someone else to yeah. Well, what I mean, you don't. Frontman, a strawman. You use a strawman who is not in France, so it will be totally legal. But there is a secret document that says that it's your money. But you don't use an offshore company. It's too obvious now. So it's changing. But there is no new way of frauding, fraud.
Alicia, do you think countries, there is a possibility that some countries ban this kind of offshore involvement of politicians, companies, or that is not a possibility?
Well, what surprised me, for example, with the Panama Papers was that we didn't find, journalists, we didn't find many Italian politicians. That's why we already experienced so much corruption in the past. We already find a higher level of for hiding our money. I mean, the politicians. So in Italy, for example, which is a very corrupted country, we've seen that we have already experienced the level of corruption which is now, for example, in Japan or other countries. So we are going just already to the next level. What I hope from my side is a European move to cope with the problem of tax haven. So we've seen that after on the week of the Panama Papers, a task force of authorities from Europe gathered, I guess, I remember in Paris, if I remember well, to collaborate together as we journalists did with the Panama Papers to control the tax switch from country to country, and so they started a collaboration on this. But what I hope now is a move. Well, it's not what I hope, but because we don't hope as a journalist, we just see how things are, and we just write about cover what we see and report what we see. the decisions have to be taken, must be taken by the politicians or by the citizens who have to stand up for their rights. But anyway, I think that with our investigation there will be a move from a European level, speaking about Europe, of course, I don't refer to other continents since we are here. So I really think that the Panama Papers or these kind of investigations are an opportunity for authorities to create task force and more collaborative ways of controlling the tax change, but also to think more about the role of these tax havens, because we know that opening a company in a tax haven is not illegal. It's illegal the way you use the company you've opened inside a tax haven, the reasons you open it. And we know that a law firm like Mossack Fonseca didn't care that much about the profiles of people who registered or asked for the services. So even if they knew for sure, because we have documents showing that Mossack Fonseca did researches on the profiles of people asking for registering in the tax havens, even if they knew that they were criminals, they accepted them. They accepted them to open companies in tax havens. So is it legal, illegal? What is the border? Which is the border between legality or not? So I think that these of the Panama Papers and these investigations on tax havens are an opportunity for authorities to reflect more on the roles of this law firm like Mossack Fonseca and on what we call the enablers, so all the structures that allow the individuals to open these tax havens, because you cannot do it on your own. You need a bank, you need a lawyer, you need a complex structure to do it. So I think a more strict control on these enablers too is needed.
Yeah, it's really a question of political priority. If you want to fight hard against that, you can do it. And one of the examples is that's true that the Mossack Fonseca didn't really care about people. They saw that they did research, they saw that they were involved in some corruption case, but they still accept them, except for American. That's also why there is not much American in the Panama Papers, because the Americans are very, very hard against tax evasion. If you do tax evasion in another country than in USA, if you go to Delaware, it's okay. But if you go in other countries than the USA, they are very, very hard. They fight very, very hard. And the laws are very, very strict. So we can saw in the Panama Papers that Mossack Fonseca, when it was an American citizen, they say, whoa, we have to take care, we don't go in the direction, we don't take this guy. So it really underlines the fact that if you have the will to change, it's just a question of political priority. So, and this kind of leak, and next leak, can shed light on this, so politicians will be obliged at the end. I mean, they will be forced to change things.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask if there are some questions from the audience on the subject.
Thank you for the interesting insights and elaborating a bit about the background of the Panama Papers. I wanted to ask you about the most recent news, I'd say, to the broader public about Panama Papers, which was the murder of the journalist in Malta. And I would be interested in hearing in how far has it affected your work, and I mean, this is of course an extreme example, but there are other ways to intimidate journalists. Are there is there a large group of journalists that are intimidated by this incident, or have there been, prior to that, people who really withdrew from the project because they faced severe problems? So sort of the background of security for journalists. Yesterday we talked a lot about security for whistleblowers, which of course is another topic, but you as people reporting about the information can also get into trouble for that, and that would be interesting to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, first thing, I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but I know there was a huge misunderstanding after also an article published by The Guardian. Galizia, Manuela Galizia, she was not a journalist from the Panama Papers investigation, so she was not a, I mean, it's very common, this, I mean, many newspapers reported about the fact that she belongs to the team. But this is, I just want to point on this, because this is a very important thing, the fact that she was not part of the team, because she did such a huge, great job, just relying based on the material, the documents we published after the investigation. So once we finish the investigation, we publish a database called Offshore Leaks. We put all the data on Offshore Leaks, and we publish a lot of articles. And based on that article, on those articles, she made her own investigation, which was something great. Even, let me say, even greater than what we did, because we had all the material. She didn't. She based it just on that. Her son is one of the members of them. He's also a member of the ICAJ. He's also working with the ICAJ and is also a member. But sorry, just to point on this, but just to see, yes, we are. Well, she was doing a kind of very insightful, investigative kind of investigative journalism. She was very. And to say, her investigations were really heavy in a way. So, and she has many enemies. Of course, we are worried, but I think the main worries for me is online, not in person. So I think hackers, for example, are the main dangers for us as journalists. So the same hackers, or anyway, the same who help us during our investigation, because we work also with the help of hackers, not for hacking, of course, but as engineers for setting up, for example, platforms for leaks, for like IRP leaks that we have with our association, or global leaks, or the one with the Intercept, for example, are all set up by hackers. But we are threatened also, we receive threats online that are even, that I don't know if they are even, of course, no, they're not worse than what happened to Galizia, but so we receive many threats and new kinds of threats. Not only that was the worst case, of course, and unthinkable. Still, we don't know anything. We can just speculate on who is who is behind her assassination, but we don't have any evidence so far. So the main threat to me is online, and I think is the most dangerous aspect. Is what we fear the most today as journalists, because as we've seen, for example, in Italy, in last years, in the previous decades, there were many killings of many criminals from the mafia, the organized crime, killing journalists. But when you kill a journalist, you get an opposite result, with many people, a crowd of people demonstrating on the streets against the mafia, for example, or so they are using other strategies, mafia guys, and they prefer using discredit, so create an environment against the journalist itself, so to blame him, so that he is blocked, he is prevented from doing his own job. So there are different ways instead of killing a journalist today. And I think in some ways it's even a worse environment for us now.
In France we just, as I said yesterday, we just had a legal procedure, legal lawsuit, but no physical threat, or, I mean, for now, so far. But the thing is, with the ICIJ, we are protected by the number. I mean, with this kind of collaboration, you cannot stop the story to go public. So if you silence one journalist, another will publish the story. So it's very good to protect journalists. It's a very efficient way to protect journalists. But still, you can have some threat. But it's you have a better chance with this kind of collaboration. And what happened in Malta was very, I mean, I'm very worried about that, because Malta is a European country, and that's just an extreme too. But yeah, as you said, she was not part of the Panama Papers at the beginning, but still she was working on this issue and other corruption related case. And I think that it's bad sign, because it's in Europe that's happened, and I think that we need a reaction from Malta, but also from European Union and from other country, because it's not a good sign. I mean, as a journalist, you can be threatened even in the heart of Europe, and not only in Asia or Pakistan or Afghanistan or Syria. So and the fact is, the more we are to work on this kind of corruption case, etc., the more we protect the journalist. And my colleague Laurent Richard in France is working in the same company than me, is creating a new project. The project it's called Forbidden Story. And it's in partnership with the ICIJ and other organizations. And the purpose is to create a secure box, secure drop box online, where the journalists in, for example, Azerbaijan or Uzbekistan or Turkey can just upload their investigation. And just in any case, they are killed or imprisoned, or other journalists around the world, other partnership can continue the investigation. So it protects the journalists at the beginning. It was launched last week. Yeah. So the Guardian, the Zeitung, other big media are partners. So, for example, a Mexican guy was killed, a journalist was killed 3 months ago because of an investigation he did. And now all the partners and this new organization, Forbidden Story, try to continue the investigation and on the social media, etc., and to have a big impact. So it's a way to help journalists who are in danger.
So you can stop a journalist, but you cannot stop his story.
Exactly, that's the point.
Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Go ahead, of course.
Hi. My question is just to beginning of the beginnings. What kind of file came from the leak? Is it like PDF file? It's a PDF. Okay. So
No. It's not PDF. It was I was saying, okay, I got the question.
Okay. So my first question is, what kind of file was it? I mean, I know it's 11 million documents, whatever, but I want to know one file. Is it PDF? What kind of file is it? And then what kind of software did the ICIJ use to make a database? Because for me, I don't have a big team, and we don't know which software to use on a collaborative way, and to make small database that will be useful for others. So my question is, what kind of software did they use, and give you this software later to you to make a research from it?
Okay. So the first question, we got a bunch of different files from PDF, but mainly emails, Outlook emails. So Outlook anyway, so emails. Excels, PDF, docs, tips, WAVs. So the mix. And mainly emails. That was the most important, because we could see, by reading the email exchange between the law firm Mossack Fonseca and the clients, we could understand the reasons behind the opening of the company, which is more important than so having the reason was a very important lead for our stories as well, not just for the numbers. And the second question about the software, we use Blacklight. So we had 3 tools, okay, for the Panama Papers. We get access to 3 different tools. One was a forum, that I referred before, kind of Facebook, private Facebook among us, which is the iHub. And then we got access to, and there we just publish our findings. Then we had the database itself on Blacklight. I don't. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Before you got the access to the database, how long did it take to put all the information into this database? That sounds like a 6 months work.
Months, yeah, that's something that ICIJ did.
Yeah.
And yeah, it took months. And still, up to the end of the investigation, we didn't have all the entire documents. We could see the last documents, I guess, some months before the investigation. So because some months, it was completed some months before the publication.
So would you recommend for small groups, for instance, if we make a small group, what kind of software would you use for collaborative work and for database making?
Well, in that case, there are many tools. I would, for example, refer also to Cloud Document Cloud, which is another software. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm an amateur.
No, okay. Me too. I'm just a reporter, so I'm based on what
You're looking for a professional.
So I know about this, but also Blacklight is not bad. In any case, I think there are different tools online for collaborative investigations. One of these is the one we've used with ICIJ, but it's just one of the many you can find online. Blacklight and Document Cloud are the 2 that I recommend, I mentioned.
Yeah, the thing that I'm not specialist, so I really don't know. But ICIJ has very brilliant people who do that, specialists who do data, who do this kind of thing.
They do only that.
Yeah, only that, and we don't really understand what they do.
Yeah.
But they do a great job. So I don't know how does it work, but it works very, 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 very good. I heard about something called Slackbot, S-L-A-C-K. Yeah, maybe some know about
not
that.
Not encrypted. But
it's not encrypted?
No, I mean,
it's
I use
shared.
Slack, but
okay. Okay, I don't really know.
As far as I know, it's not, but we need to ask to an hacker if they can
yeah. Yeah, so we're not specialists. So, no. But there are some. I mean, even with the Signal or WhatsApp, I mean, just to exchange, it's quite secure. I mean, if WhatsApp is Facebook, I think, or Google, so you don't do an investigation about Facebook using WhatsApp, but otherwise it's okay.
Thank you. And yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, Igor Poptraikov, Pyramid Upside Down. I'm also sitting here on behalf of Voices, the magazine of the European Voluntary Agency. The first question for Alessia. Did you, the husband of the daughter of Hillary Clinton, he's doing he's a businessman, and some bloggers say that he was involved with actually actually they are not the Panama files, the Panama accounts. So if you want to take the money, you have to launder them through something, and many times they were doing fabricating of information or controlment of the media. This area is not well researched. So some bloggers connected this linkage, and also, the firms that are in the region, in more particular in Macedonia, Fidelinka and Glencore were involved with this. So are you anyhow acquainted with this information? And not just because he's Russian, his nationality is Russian, but due to the nature of his business. So tell us if you know anything about this. And second question for Mr. Benoit, the spotlight of the especially of the French media during when the Panama accounts occurred was somewhere else. Also, I think this is not well researched, because they were trying to put the spotlight of the public interest on some other sensationalist information, such as it was the information that about the daughter of Hitler that lives in France. Her mother is French, so she's a
Didn't get the name, the daughter of who?
Of Adolf Hitler.
Excuse me, if we can keep it short with the questions, please, because
So,
we have a workshop soon coming up, and we're already late.
And she's a full citizen French. She has all the right, and she was like scandalized in this. She's a mother of 2 children, and like this, especially Le Monde, I think they didn't write almost anything about this, and they're trying to make more interesting information so that the spotlight will somewhere else. So how do you explain this, and did you find any linkage with the controlment of the media by this finance line?
It will be very short. I never heard about this story. I don't know the story, and we never talk about the story in France. No, never.
And same answer from my side. I don't have no information about that.
And there was one more question over there, and we'll wrap this up. Yeah.
Thank you. So my name is Anastasia, and I'm teaching data journalism in Balkans and Central Asian countries. And a question is about methodology. So when people say that that was a data-driven investigation, data journalism work, then I have a little problem with methodology, because for me that was a lot of searches or so-called fishing expeditions, so that you type a name in your internal Google, and then if it comes, then you do classic investigative job from that moment, right? So correct me if I'm wrong on that. And that leads me to the second part of question. When Benoit, you say that nobody said investigate Putin, nobody needed to say that, because for the Russian part it was obvious that they need to investigate Putin, and that's exactly what they did. So they were just putting every name they could imagine was connected to Putin, and then that's why they put this cello guy, because it's a friend from the long time ago, right? That's what Roman Onion did, and that's how with this fishing expedition they found this story. Thank you.
I didn't get the last point. Can you explain a bit about the Russian part?
Yeah, I mean, just for me, it turned into a lot of finger pointing to important people, and that's why ICIJ also sold the Putin investigation so loud. So on every page, on the main page, there was also Putin and his man, sort of. So it was not about the scope of tax evasion. It was not a structured story about this is how it's bad for your country. That was about this is another bad guy, and like let's discuss him.
Yeah, I didn't report on the Russian parts. I don't know if you mean that someone could have interest to leak that to target Putin. That's what you mean, or I really didn't understand.
Sorry, maybe I'm putting
You're
that,
saying
yeah.
that the ICIJs push more on the story of Putin than other stories?
In Russia particularly, yes, but also in all other countries.
So Russian members of the ICIJ push on that story, do you mean that?
Yes.
Okay, that's up to them. So each of the members of the ICIJ can decide on which person, on which character to focus on. So if they decided to that the story was the main for them, and also because it was a public interest, maybe instead of referring on people of less interest, of course, if you find a person, a politician who has a special role in a country, and you find them, and you find him in a tax haven, you focus on it. I think it's quite of a journalistic point of view. It's quite understandable. I mean, I don't know which was the editorial decision behind Anin Roman in pushing that story, but I can say that ICIJ treated equally all the stories because they were not, they didn't have any editorial decision up on our stories. We decided where to focus on, and each newspaper, each media could decide if focus on a person, on a politician, or on a situation, whatever they did. So maybe from your perspective, of course the Putin story was very big. It was treated as a big story. I cannot deny that, of course. But from my perspective, there were many other stories that were as important as that one, and I perceive them as important and equally published and treated by ICIJ. On the methodology, the question you made. Is not just searching on a Google search tool. It was about making a list of all the names we find, all the monies connected to each person, to all the trusts or companies or bank accounts related to one person connected to the others. So in the end, we use part of these documents, more both of course the Excels, the PDF, and the emails to extract data and create a list of data, pages of Excels and information that we use to as a base for our stories. Then, in that sense, I don't know if you agree with me. It can be considered a data-driven investigation.
Yeah, as I said, the research on the database is just the beginning. So it was easy to do to research, but only the beginning. And after it was hours, days, nights to put all the puzzle together between the mails, the documents, the call we did. So it was very hard job, and it was classical journalist at the end. The tools are new, but at the end it's just classical investigation. But what's really new is again the collaboration, and it's what makes it so powerful. And because it's a bit cliche, but the more we are, the better we are. I mean, we're better together. For example, if some people find a French name, a colleague in Swiss called me to say, hey, I found this French name, and it was an important name, and without him, maybe I had missed it. For example, the role of the bank, it was hard to understand. It was very difficult, so everybody was trying to understand the different schemes, the different use of offshore company, and after on this forum, on this Facebook, we just, some say, okay, I understand that. Another one will say, I understand that, and all together it makes sense. So it's very powerful. And I'm sorry about the case about Putin. I don't know. I just know that Putin is a big name. So for sure, on a marketing point of view, it's good to do headlines about to be. Frank about that. It's good to have a headline about Putin, but still I think that the really close circle around Putin who use offshore company in a country like Russia is a story. and it's an important story.
Well, thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Benoit, for this wonderful discussion. We will have a 15-minute break. We are a little late on the agenda. After this, we also have 2 workshops today. We will have Barbara Schiavulli heading the next workshop about women journalists reporting from high-risk zones. Then we will have a screening of The Boss, the movie, and then after that we will have a workshop with Dario Jurichan about crowdfunding campaign. There he is. About crowdfunding campaigns for investigative journalism. And then after that, yeah, we have a busy agenda today. We have the screening of the Medal of the Loud. And then in the evening, we have the debate about investigative journalism in the region, challenges and perspectives. And then we finish the day with screening of the movie Flatland Without Birds. So thank you and see you during the day.